सेव किया था ना?
मैं सिर्फ इसलिए गया था क्योंकि उसने मुझे कॉल किया, that's it. But listen तो.
Save it for someone else.
जिंदगी में सेव करना जरूरी है, मगर जब बात पैसों की हो, सिर्फ सेविंग से काम नहीं चलेगा। इक्विटी म्यूचुअल फंड्स में इन्वेस्ट कीजिए और अपने सेविंग्स को आगे बढ़ने का मौका दीजिए।
Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme-related documents carefully.
So what's happening with Donald Trump? I know that you've been reading about all the court cases, indictments as these are called in America, then grand jury indictments, then trials. Where are the trials beginning? Judges. There are judges in various places, courts in various places. Some judges he's attacking. He's also contesting within the Republican Party for the nomination. He's a polarizing figure, not just in all of America, but all over the world. He's also a polarizing figure within the Republican Party because Republican Party is also split between the classical, traditional Republicanists, if I may call them, and also populists who are Trump's people. Right now, it looks like at this point, the populists, that is, supporters of Trump, are in much greater numbers in the Republican Party than those of his likely rivals, that is Governor DeSantis, Vivek Ramaswamy, or any of the others. That said, that is the larger Republican Party politics. That might be a bit too micro for us at this stage, or might be a bit out of syllabus at this point of time, or we are better off keeping it out of the syllabus at this point of time because we aren't quite there yet. Let the Republicans sort some of this mess out amongst themselves. The important thing right now is Donald Trump's court cases and all the charges against him. Now, we need to learn about this for multiple reasons. One, of course, is to see how a democratic system, a functioning democratic system, deals with charges against an immediate past president of the country, immediate past chief executive of the country. Our country has an experience of dealing with that. Indira Gandhi faced charges, P.V. Narasimha Rao faced charges, Manmohan Singh's government faced charges. In the American system, however, there is a difference. The difference is that the president is the chief executive with very wide powers, much wider powers than, say, the Prime Minister of India. Any Prime Minister of India, at least if you go by the system, some people can have more sweeping powers, but still these are prime ministerial powers, and we focus on what is constitutionally mandated. So in the American system, the president as chief executive has much greater powers than, say, the prime minister in a Westminster style country like India or UK. That said, the other important factor with Donald Trump is not only is he an immediate past president, he's also the prime candidate of the grand old party, as the Republicans are called, and sometimes that's an expression we tend to import jargon from the Americans. So sometimes we also use that expression for the Congress party in India, which I think is a bit misplaced. Nevertheless, the real grand old party, that is right now in the throes of a big churning within itself, and it looks like at this point, if there is an impartial vote within the American grand old party, Trump will be the candidate. So the challenge is to hold Donald Trump, immediate past president, and also a likely next presidential candidate, to hold him to fire of the laws in the states, in multiple states, and at the federal level. So how does the system work? So first of all, let's get some basics right, because these are like the ABC of American system. It's one thing to try and understand American politics, which is complex, not as complex as Indian politics by any stretch of imagination. Sometimes, though, it would look like at this point that it's more broken than Indian politics. That said, it is the same two parties that contest at the federal level and in the states. Within those parties, there are divisions, etc. That is besides the point. But Indian politics tends to be a lot more complex, particularly as you go out to the states. The more complex thing for us in India about the American system is the American judicial system. So you see subpoenas, you see felonies. Now, so for those of my generation, definitely for me, the first time that I read the word felony being used for a crime was when we started reading Perry Mason novels, Ernst Stanley Gardner. I don't know if that stuff is read these days, but my generation, yes, maybe a generation after. So felony in the American system is different from a crime. It is not just a word of English. Americans use English language in their own different ways, but felony just doesn't mean any other crime. A crime would be a bit like a traffic offense or something that attracts a punishment of less than 1 year of prison, punishment or fine or probation. A felony would be a more serious crime, anything that attracts more than a year's punishment, more than a year's jail sentence. That's what a felony is. And all the charges against Donald Trump right now, for example, 91 charges are felonies. These are serious ones. The second thing is, what is an indictment? And what is an indictment? What is an indictment? What is a grand jury? And what's a jury? And these complexities will keep coming back at us, hitting back at us as we head towards the American presidential elections, next year, but activity is already begun. In another couple of months, a lot of the contours should become clearer. So a jury in the American system is simply a group of people, a group of citizens who then decide by a vote whether somebody is guilty or not guilty. So they are crucial to the trial. That is when a trial takes place. The judge supervises the trial and jury then decides who's guilty and who's not guilty. Before that, there is a grand jury. So what's a grand jury? Before we understand what's grand jury, we have to see what's an indictment. So first of all, an accused faces an indictment in the American system, which is when you have a bunch of charges and a court reads out an indictment. These are all the charges that, say, Donald Trump was told under which you can be charged. It does not matter so much until the next stage is crossed. And the next stage is the grand jury stage. Now what happens at that stage is the judge then hands over these charges to a larger group of people called the grand jury. That's usually 16 to 23 citizens. That is called the grand jury. That sits on these charges and then decides by a vote whether these charges are serious enough for a person, for an accused to be charged with these or not. So that is what has happened in Trump's case lately, and that's why Trump is in big news right now, because there is a grand jury indictment in Atlanta, Georgia. So that is the second stage. First, the indictment, that's the basic charges. Second, grand jury, that means a larger jury then decides, oh, these charges are serious enough. We've also looked at some witnesses. Grand jury can also examine witnesses and say that, look, there is enough juice in these charges to charge this person, and the trial can now begin. So Trump has crossed that unfortunate Rubicon for him. So Trump is charged in 4 different sets of cases, or 4 categories of cases. One is in Georgia, 2 are in Washington, 1 is in New York. What are these cases? So the case in Georgia is that he tried to overturn the election in that state, the Electoral College verdict in that state. And why was that state so important? That state was so important because at that point it looked like the election may be much closer than it ultimately turned out to be, because some other states also had close counts. So Georgia contributes 16 electoral college votes to the US presidential election, and Georgia count was very close. Ultimately, what was the percentages that the 2 presidential candidates got? Biden took Georgia, it's winner takes all. Whoever takes even one more vote in a state takes all of the state's electoral college votes. That's the American system. Winner takes all. So in Georgia, Joe Biden took 49.47% of the votes, 49.47. And what did Trump get? He got 49.24% of the votes. So just that much difference. For a total of 11,779 votes. That was the difference in the entire state. That swung all of the electoral college votes. So if you want to see the total number of votes, 24,73,633 for Joe Biden and 24,61,854 for Donald Trump. So a difference of a grand number of 11,779. So Trump thought at that point that, look, maybe if they can do a recount, maybe somebody fixed this election, somebody deliberately manipulated these results, because he always talked of the deep state being against him, or maybe fake voters got in and he was making phone calls trying to influence the state's governor and administration, particularly the Secretary of State. Secretary of State, I'd say like the Chief Secretary of the State. Again, it's something that's confusing with the American system, because the Secretary of State in the federal government is the foreign minister, but each state also has a Secretary of State. So in this case, he was calling the Secretary of State, and those phone calls, and I will talk about that in a little bit more detail in just a minute, those phone calls were monitored, and those transcripts are part of the grand jury indictment. So one is the set of cases in Georgia, in the state of Georgia, where he allegedly tried to not just hijack the election, but change the results of the election. That's one set of cases. The other set of cases, say in Washington, that's another set of serious cases. These are pictures all of us saw on our TV screens at January 6, 2021, when it became evident that Trump had lost the election. His supporters came and invaded the Capitol Hill, caused a lot of damage, and that was seen as an insurrection that amounted to allegedly stealing an election, stealing an election result. That look, these might be the numbers of the election, but I think the results have been stolen, election has been stolen. Again, evil forces are at work against me, and I've got this popular support, street support, and my street support will make sure that the election is overturned and I stay on in power. That is the allegation. In any case, what happened in Capitol Hill is something that the whole world saw, and those trials of people who actually carried out the invasion and the vandalism, those trials have been carrying on, and convictions are being handed out. Now, in that also, Trump is charged. So that is the second set of cases. The third set of cases is also in Washington, again serious cases, and these are cases whereby it is alleged that he took a whole bunch, boxes full of secret or confidential documents with him to his resort home at Mar-a-Lago, and there he kept these documents, and he also let a lot of unauthorized people have access to these documents. We know that this is where raids were carried out by FBI and the American agencies, and these documents were discovered. So this is again a bunch of cases. I'll give you a count in just a minute. The fourth set of cases is that he falsified his business accounts, his business records. Why? Because he allegedly had a sexual encounter with this woman, popularly known as Stormy Daniels. Stormy Daniels later said that she had a sexual encounter with Donald Trump, and that Donald Trump paid her hush money through his lawyer Michael Cohen to stay quiet in the run up to the 2016 election, because if she had made these revelations, then Donald Trump's election campaign would have got ruined, or maybe the Republicans would have decided not to give him the nominations. How did Donald Trump pay for this? After he became president, allegedly, he was falsifying his business records to keep passing on money to his lawyer, Michael Cohen, who in turn was passing that money on to Stormy Daniels. That is the fourth set of cases. So these are four very different cases, not connected with each other. Interfering with the Georgia election, 2, stealing the national election or stealing power, basically negating the national election. 3, taking secret documents with him and allowing unauthorized people have access to them. And 4, paying hush money to Stormy Daniels to hide a sexual encounter with her, and then falsifying his business records to pay his lawyer, then Michael Cohen, through whom these payments were routed to Stormy Daniels. These are the 4 cases. Once again, if you see the Washington Post, I'm using this article. I'm also sharing a link with you. You can read the whole article. This gives you a rundown of all the cases and where they stand, etc. In fact, there are 2 articles, one from Politico. The Politico article also gives you its assessment of what the strengths of the prosecution in each case is, and what is the weakness of prosecution in each cases. If you want, if you are a Trumpian, if you believe in Trump, you can reverse it. What is the strength of Trump in each cases, and what is the weakness of prosecution in each cases? You can see it any which way. That's the Politico article. Second is the Washington Post article. You can see in that article that Trump at this point faces 44 federal charges. Federal is central government, like CBI in India, filing charges against somebody, and 47 state charges. Of the 47 state charges, 34 are in the state of New York, where Trump usually conducts his business, where the Trump business empire resides. So 34 charges are in the state of New York, and 13 charges are in the state of Georgia. So that is 44 plus 34 plus 13, that is 91 charges. That is the breakup of 91 charges. Of the federal charges, just as of the state charges, 34 are in New York, 13 are in Georgia. Of the federal charges, 4 charges are related to the January 6th insurrection or the invasion of the Capitol Hill. 4 charges. 40 charges 40 charges are to do with the secret documents that he's supposed to have taken away with him, and to which he allowed access to unauthorized people. Now, these are all serious charges. These are all felonies, not crimes, and some of these charges carry up to 20 years in jail. Now, once again, because there are 4 sets of charges, now if you were Trump, what do you have to deal with? You have to deal with one set of judge and prosecutors and jury in Georgia, another set in New York, and yet another set in Washington. Now, Washington are the cases that he's most worried about, because those cases also carry the strongest sentences. That is the insurrection on Capitol Hill, the invasion of Capitol Hill, and also secret documents having been taken away. And there he's being tried by a judge called Tanya Chutkan, and she's the one who's been attacked all the time by Donald Trump and his supporters. Donald Trump is calling her biased, saying that she wants me in jail, asking for a change in judge, etc., etc. So those are the serious charges. So he has to worry about that. He has to worry about charges in Georgia, where another judge and a bunch of prosecutors are trying him, and also in New York. Right now, what he's trying to do is he's trying to get these cases transferred at the federal level, because if he gets his cases transferred at the federal level, he may or may not like the judge, but the fact is that he has a bunch of benefits from transferring these cases to Washington, because once at the federal level cases, the trials are faster, they are also seen to be fairer. Everybody runs from trial courts to High Court, and if they had in India, and if they had their way, jump over High Court and reach Supreme Court directly. It's a bit like that. So you think that you might get a better judge, a judge who's more capable of handling more complex cases at the federal level. In any case, it's a good tactics. It's a good tactics to create confusion. So he and his people, because a whole bunch of his aides have also been charged along with him, they are all asking for these cases to be transferred at the federal level. Now, we saw the insurrection, the pictures of the insurrection videos live on our TV channel. So those details we know. We also know all the stuff that went on, because we saw pictures of those boxes being taken out of his house or his resort home in Mar-a-Lago. But what happened in Georgia is more complex and more interesting. In Georgia, he apparently called the Secretary of State, whose name is Brad Raffensperger. He called him and he said, and this is how he's quoted from the recorded transcript of the phone conversation. He says, and I quote, "We have at least 2 or 3, anywhere from 250,000 to 300,000, that is 2.5 to 3 lakhs, ballots were dropped mysteriously into the rolls. Much of that had to do with Fulton County, which hasn't been checked. By the way, it's in Fulton County now that he's been indicted." And then he goes on to say, "We think," and I quote again, "we think that if you check the signatures, a real check of signatures going back in Fulton County, you will find at least a couple of 100,000 of forged signatures of people who have been forged. And we are quite sure that's going to happen." And how did Brad Raffensperger respond? The Secretary of State of Georgia. He said, and remember, Georgia has a Republican governor and a Republican majority in the state Senate and the state House as well. That is the situation now as well. Its governor is Republican and Republicans have majority both in the Senate and the House. It just so happens that by a very thin margin, Trump lost the vote in presidential elections in that state. So Raffensperger responded, and I again quote from the same transcript. President Trump, we've had several lawsuits and we've had to respond in court to the lawsuits and contentions. We don't agree that you have won, and we don't. I didn't agree about the 200,000 number that you had mentioned, and I can go through that point by point. Additionally, Raffensperger said in very clear words, and I quote again from the transcript, well, Mr. President, the challenge that you have is the data you have is wrong. I'm also sharing with you a link to this transcript which was published by CNN. You can also hear it on audio. In fact, you can also see some of the parts of the transcript running on your screen as we talk. So this tells you the seriousness of the charges that Trump faces. So look at the picture from where Trump sits. He's got these 4 different sets of cases, but 91 charges against him, all felonies, all serious cases. Many of these have up to 20 years of jail. You could have a situation where you have a convict in America who fights elections, who wins elections, and a president could be sitting in jail. Now, there are lots of complexities to that situation. We'll talk about that in the course of time when we get closer to that. But right now, Trump has these 4 cases, multiple judges, multiple prosecutors, hundreds of witnesses have been examined, and now they have to be cross-examined, etc., etc. It's a humongous thing. So Trump's people in some cases have asked for the trial dates to be set in April of 2026 because they say that there is so much evidence that we have to go over all this. But of course, they want to push the can. They want to kick the can down the street, ideally way beyond the next election. And that's what's going on. The charges tried to subvert election in a state, tried to steal election in the entire country, falsified his business records to pay somebody to keep her mouth shut with whom he had had a sexual encounter, and number 4, took secret documents away with him after he had lost power and let unauthorized people take a look at them. If you look at it from Trump's point of view, in fact, as I'm thinking, it's reminding me of something that Narasimha Rao had said. After Narasimha Rao lost power and lots of cases were filed against him and he was appearing in court, he once said in a conversation that was recorded and published with me, he said, भाई कोई कहता है मुर्गी चुराई, कोई कहता है मुर्गी के अंडे, और सब सोचते हैं चोरी तो करी है. Some people say I stole the chickens, some people say I stole the eggs, but everybody seems unanimous that I am a thief. So I have to navigate that situation, he said. Trump is navigating a situation like that. Nevertheless, look at the politics of the Republican Party, and that's very interesting. So we have for you some data from the opinion polls in America, and some of that will run on the screen as I talk, but I'm also sharing a couple of links with you. There is a link from University of Texas, from a University of Texas survey. There is also a link from a PBS survey, pbs.org survey. I'm sharing both links with you. But University of Texas, 58% of the people they polled, people across all political persuasions, 58% people said that Trump should not run. 31% said should run, 11% had no opinion. But again, cut it down. Among the Democrats, 82% said Trump should not run. Among the Republicans, only 33% said Trump should not run. In fact, 56% of the Republicans said he should run. This survey was in Feb of this year, so a few months back. If you want to look at more recent numbers, the more recent survey is the PBS survey. PBS survey tells us that among Republicans, 63% of the Republicans say Trump should run. 74% of the Republicans said, look, any which way, if it is Trump as Republican candidate versus a Democrat, we will vote for Trump. That's for Republicans. But if you look at all of the American voters, 53% said that they do not want Trump to run. And 53%, the same number, also approve of the indictment. So you might think if 53% are against Trump in a highly polarized country, that means Trump is really sitting with no chance of winning the next election. But you know what? In America, it doesn't quite work like that, because in America, the choice of the president is not by popular vote. You don't take the votes of the entire country and then decide who's got more votes. That's not how it works. If that is the way it worked, then Hillary Clinton would have become the president of America, not Donald Trump, because popular vote nationally does not decide who wins. It's who carries the states with enough number of electoral college votes, that side wins. So 53% opposed to Trump doesn't automatically mean that Trump is down and out. It's a question of what does he get in the critical states and does he get that critical mass of electoral college votes. So once again, all these cases are on. They are serious cases. They've reached a serious stage when trials will now begin. Trump will be caught up in all of this. It will be a lot of expense, a lot of time, etc., etc. But again, polls tell us that as his indictments increase and as his prosecutions increase, in fact, within his base, his popularity is rising.